This is a tough one to swallow. Bears lose 29-27 to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the refs. The officiating in this game was awful. Tony Correnti, the man leading this crew, had a terrible game. Awful. Literally every single call went against Chicago, and they called nothing against the Steelers. Excuse me. And I actually have some evidence to back this up. You see, there was a drive where the Bears were in the red zone. The score was 14-3. The Bears were trying to get their first touchdown of the game. On 1st and goal, Justin Fields throws a touchdown pass from the half-yard line to Jimmy Graham. Touchdown Bears. But oh no, there's a penalty. And it's on James Daniels for a low block on, I think it was TJ Watt, when he barely even touched him. And it was on the edge of the so-called tight end box. Now, using the eye test, I can totally understand why they would throw it because, you don't have the lines that you do see on the broadcast. Using the eye test and these kinds of things are very bad. And it's not necessarily very bad, it's very hard. So that one, probably shouldn't have been called anyways because Daniels barely even hit TJ Watt anyways. But you know what? That happens. You know what? It's okay. It's a 15-yard penalty. We're from the 16. It's all right. We'll be fine. If we have to settle for 3, you know what? We blame it on the penalty, basically, because you know what? It was a bad call. But there was more. On the very next play, Justin Fields gets hit in his shoulder. It doesn't look that great when you look on its slow-mo replay, and I can understand why they did not throw the flag for this hit, mainly because it was shoulder contact on his shoulder. It wasn't helmet-to-helmet contact. So you could argue the fact that, they didn't throw the flag, whatever. That, I think, is the least controversial play of this series, because the next one is arguably the worst one. Because on 3rd and goal, Justin Fields dumps it off for Montgomery, and he actually gets kind of close to scoring, but he's short. They would evidently send Santos to kick a field goal, which would actually be his 40th straight field goal made. The next highest streak is Tyler Bass at 15. But you know what? That field goal shouldn't have even happened. You know why? Because the refs decide not to call roughing the passer on Highsmith. Because he took the clear 2 steps and ran into Fields, knocked him down. And while I thought it was hilarious that Fields kind of sat there like a lying corpse, almost like he was flopping and trying to sell it, he still didn't get it. Doesn't matter if he flopped. He wasn't going to get it anyways because the refs were not calling anything for Chicago tonight. It baffles me. It really baffles me. The fact that these refs had not 1, not 2, but 3 straight awful calls in a red zone situation, goal to go situation. I don't understand how you do not call at least one of these correctly. Should not have been a personal foul to start with, so these second 2 plays should not ever happened. And then you don't call a roughing the passer on Highsmith, even though the quarterback rushers will do much, much less, sometimes even touching them wrong, and they'll get a roughing the passer call. And you're not going to give them for this? When people talk about Refball and how inconsistent the refereeing and the officiating is in the NFL, they aren't kidding. There is a problem. They just do not call things correctly half the time. Half the time you're sitting there for a penalty like, what the hell is this? I don't even know what to say anymore. They were not calling anything against Pittsburgh. And while, yes, they probably committed less penalties because, our entire team was penalized, 13 times in this game? Steelers, you're not going to match that. But it's like, some of the penalties that probably could have gone against the Pittsburgh Steelers were not called. And there were some penalties against Chicago that were called that probably shouldn't have been called. Now, those were bad calls. But, as we go on through the game, at this point it's 14-3, or actually with the field goal, it's 14-6 now. Freiermuth has a touchdown catch. Najee Harris has a rushing touchdown. Bears look pretty bad through the first half. As per usual, the offense can't do anything. But then they get something going, and on the second play of the fourth quarter, Darnell Mooney takes a snap or a handoff from Dave Montgomery in the Wildcat formation and runs it in for a score, and the Bears have life. And you know what? It's a one-score game because it's now 20-13. Steelers tack on another field goal. It's 23-13. And you know what? The Bears do nothing with their next drive, as per the Bears offense does in key situations. The thing is, I thought in my head, we need to get a turnover here. We need a turnover. The defense and special teams needs to produce a turnover. Like, causing a fumble on this punt return would be awesome. And I guess ironically, that's exactly what happens. Ray McLeod gets it jarred loose before he's touched down, and DeAndre Houston Carson pitched up the loose ball and takes it in for the score untouched. And you know what? There's 6 minutes left. It's a 3-point game. And at this point, the Steelers are doing all they can to avoid embarrassment at home. They did have that collapse against the Chargers in 2018 that broke like some massive record about having a certain lead at halftime. They were undefeated. In this game, they were undefeated, I think, over 210 or 240 games, undefeated when having a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. And with how the Bears have somehow, some way, crawled their way back into this game after getting penalized over and over and over, and the defense getting more tired, was a sheer testament to this team's resilience. And on the ensuing Steelers drive, with under 4 minutes to go, Ben Roethlisberger has a terrible throw. I think he lost his grip on the ball, and it comes out. The refs smartly did not blow the whistle dead. With how the officiating had gone against Chicago in this game so far, I wouldn't have been surprised if they called the play dead. Christian Jones picks it up smartly and goes all the way in for a touchdown, as they didn't even rule it a touchdown. They ruled it incomplete, but smart play by Christian Jones to take advantage of no whistle, run down the sideline, and take it in for the touchdown. But if you take one look at it, you can see that Roethlisberger did have his arm going forward. This is no like tuck rule controversy. There's no disputing it. It was an incomplete pass. Now here's where things get very, very bad. Literally the very next play on 3rd and 8, Roethlisberger drops back, tries to get away from the pocket and find someone, but guess who comes in and sacks him? Cassius Marsh, who I've never heard of, just elevated from the practice squad today, gets the biggest sack of the game, one of the biggest sacks of the season for the Bears, and he does a beautiful like high kick, like a karate-style kick. I thought that sack celebration was fantastic. You know, it's 4th down. They're behind the 50. They can't get a field goal. We're going to get the ball back, and all we need is a field goal to tie. And with how the Bears defense was decimated today, no Jackson, no Ogletree, and no Mack again. 3 of our biggest defensive players, although Jackson has had a bad season, he still is a big defensive player that you do plan for. And obviously it just brings in some other safety that could be worse. And the secondary is already bad as it is, with losing Fuller and losing basically everyone we've had from, I think, 2018. I think the entire secondary that was there is gone now. The defensive line stayed at least pretty decent for their standards, getting to the quarterback at least a couple times, something they didn't do in the last couple of weeks. Now the catch here is Cassius Marsh had just made the biggest play of the day for Chicago, the biggest defensive play. And you know what? They're coming and sending out the punt team, and all of a sudden you see a flag. And then you hear Tony Correnti say that it's taunting on Cassius Marsh. Taunting? What the hell was he taunting for? For a split second, I literally thought his little sack celebration, that sick high kick, was taunting. And if that was taunting, that would be embarrassing. That would be the definition of the no fun league. But no, it's arguably even worse. Cassius Marsh walks a couple steps, looks the punter the wrong way, and Tony Correnti throws the flag. Cassius Marsh did not say a single word, all he did was just walk closer to the Steelers sideline, and that was it. Did he look at him the wrong way? Did Tony Correnti feel like the way that Marsh looked at the punter, that he hurt his feelings? Oh, poor punter. The defensive lineman hurt his feelings. He looked at him the wrong way. 15 yards and a first down. Like, where is the logic in that? Where is the logic in that? I don't see any. And you know what? You know what was even better? Is that when Cassius Marsh decided to go back to the sideline, you can kind of see on the replay Tony Correnti take a step back so that there's incidental contact from the official for Marsh. And if that was the reason that Correnti threw the flag, that is the most biased and that is the most, unbelievable call that I've ever seen in my entire life. And if that's the reason he threw the flag, Correnti should be fired along with the rest of his staff. Because that is unacceptable in this important of a situation in a game with a 3-point game where the penalty that you're talking about gives him a first down inside Bears territory, basically giving them a free field goal. It's an embarrassment. And that penalty should not have been called. Marsh should not be blamed for this loss at all because the refs basically gave the Steelers some more time to burn clock. And they didn't do too much. The Bears forced him 3 and out after this penalty. Boswell kicked another 50-yarder. By the way, the first time a kicker has kicked 2 50-yard field goals at Heinz Field, which is really weird. So many of these kinds of stat lines in this game, I don't know. I don't know what it was about this game. Just the stars aligned and just so many weird stats came about, and we were informed. So the Bears get the ball with about 2.5 minutes left, and they need a touchdown. They don't need a field goal. They need a touchdown. Keep in mind, earlier in the game, to make it 20-6, Pat Freiermuth caught another touchdown, and Chris Boswell missed the extra point. So that right now, if the Bears scored a touchdown, that would be the difference, which would drive Steelers fans up a wall because they have criticized Boswell before for missing kicks. Boswell has a very love-hate relationship with Steeler Nation. It's I almost feel bad for him because he's just, one week the fan base loves him, the next week they hate his guts and want him kicked off the team. This would be the drive that Justin Fields would have to make to establish himself as a really good quarterback and the quarterback of the future for Chicago. And you know what? He's had some pretty dang good passes in this game. Had the 50-yard bomb to Marquise Goodwin, which he hung on to. He hung on to that ball. And then he had the beautiful over-the-defender pass to Jimmy Graham. That was a perfectly placed ball, and Jimmy Graham came down with it. But the time is now for Justin Fields. He needs to own the field here. And it felt like it had been forever since the Bears offense had the ball. Because after they scored the touchdown in the start of the fourth quarter, Steelers had it. They kicked a field. No, they didn't kick a field goal. No, they did. They kicked a field goal. And then the Bears stalled. They punted it away. And the Bears picked it up, took it in for a touchdown. And then Roethlisberger got it back. It felt like it had been quite a while since Fields had gotten a look at the ball. And, we scored another 7 points. So as we go on, Fields is, he's doing his thing. Bears are actually looking pretty good here. Fields is making some good passes. And then the 2-minute warning happens. It's 3rd and 2. And I thought that passing here was a terrible option, mainly because of, the Bears just aren't a great passing team. And I wasn't expecting them to dial up something pretty good. I was expecting it to just be some short cross routes. Fields would throw it in the middle, and then it would be danger of picked off and, right through someone's hand or knocked down, whatever. It would be knocked down. It would be incomplete. And I would really have been preferred just running it on the ground with Montgomery to power through for 2 yards. Speaking of which, this is Montgomery's first game since he got injured in week 4. I was so happy to hear that he was going to come back this week. I mean, Herbert's done a good job. Herbert and Williams have done just fine covering for Montgomery, but you know what? It's nice to have our RB1 back. And he had a decent game. Didn't have, the best game of his life. Didn't have the worst game of his life, but, he was there. Anyways, on 3rd and 2, they do pass. Fields then dials up a perfect ball to your boy, Allen Robinson, who's been struggling all season. He just hasn't been getting targets. Him and Justin Fields just have not gelled. But Fields gives Robinson his biggest catch of the season, no doubt. Right here, the man made a beautiful catch, and that was the biggest, I think, catch of his season. I think maybe even yardage-wise. Just the biggest play Robinson has had all season. So the ball's on the 16 now. And on first down, Fields does a good job at eluding the pressure. And then he steps into the throw and fires to the side of the end zone. And guess who's there? It's Darnell Mooney, Money Mooney, for the touchdown. And the Bears somehow, some way, fought their way back into this game when all hope seemed lost. And Cairo Santos bangs the extra point in after a penalty that they decided to force on the kickoff. And Santos buries it. It's 27-26 Bears. Big players make big plays at big times in big games, and that's what Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney just did on that drive. A huge throw, probably the best throw of Justin Fields' career so far. I mean, he's had some beautifully placed balls, but they're overshadowed because they didn't really mean much in the end. This meant a ton. But there's one problem. There's 1:45 seconds left on the clock. So, yeah, Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney hook up on the touchdown catch. And the defense, who is pretty tired, has to come out and make one final stop. Unfortunately, the defense is pretty gassed after being out there for probably about 5-6 minutes straight. And they had a couple bad penalties. Robert Quinn lined up in the neutral zone twice in a row. And then I think it was Trevis Gibson who lined up on, I think, the very next play. But that, play had a pretty big play for the Steelers. So they declined the penalty. Those kinds of penalties killed the Bears in this game, especially in the first half. Took so many bad penalties that kept extending drives for Pittsburgh and ending drives for the Bears. Penalties was the name of the game for this one. You'll say they get down in the zone, about 40 seconds left. Big Ben tries to pull a John Elway and run for a first down, 3rd and 2. He stopped a bit short. They had to come out and make the spot. Bears have to use their final timeout with this to stop the runoff, I think it was. I think that's probably what they had to do. Boswell kicks it through from 40. It's a 2-point Pittsburgh lead with just, I think, 26 or something seconds left. Jakeem Grant smartly does not take it out of the end zone because he fumbled one of those kick returns earlier in the game. And Justin Fields has got to go probably about 50 yards in 26 seconds to try and win this game. And you know what? They did pretty well. Justin Fields had a couple good passes that got them and gave them a chance. With about 5 seconds left, Fields has a short throw. They try to go short to try and get out of bounds, get a couple more yards to make the field goal just that much more makeable. But TJ Watt, who has 3 sacks tonight, backs it down, had a game for the ages. Another huge game. TJ Watt is a bona fide star. And the Bears have got to either go for the Hail Mary or go for the game-winning kick. And I think this was unbelievably shocking. They sent Santos out for a 65-yard field goal. So they send Santos out for a 65-yard field goal instead of going for the Hail Mary, which, knowing how Nagy has been these past couple of years after the double doink, I was honestly incredibly shocked, and I think Santos finally got Nagy to restore faith in a kicker. Going into this kick, Santos had made 40 straight kicks, tying the 3rd longest in NFL history, which, coming from a Bears kicker, is unheard of at this point in time. Since we let go Robbie Gould, it's been a turmoil, and I think we finally found our guy. No joke when I say that Santos stole Eddie Piñeiro's job. He was all right in 2019 after we kicked Parkey, but Santos came in and was immediately fantastic. He had not missed since week 3 last season against the Atlanta Falcons. This just dawned upon me. You've seen this happen before where, Teams are down by like 1 or 2 points going into the final seconds, and they decide to take a gamble, go for the 60-plus yard field goal. In 2015, the Chicago Bears came back against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium to take an 18-14 lead from a Jay Cutler touchdown pass to Matt Forte. God, that's not something I was expecting to say. But regardless, Cairo Santos attempted a 66-yard field goal to try and win the game for Kansas City, and he shanked it. It wasn't even accurate. Probably just got over the goal line. No good. And the Bears ended up beating Kansas City. He gets a chance to do it again. Only this time it's a 65-yarder, and it's against Pittsburgh. And he's playing for the Bears. And the kick is up, and he misses. It looked really good from the angle that they showed on the broadcast live from 65. I initially thought it hit the crossbar. But on second look, he was probably about 4 or 5 yards short. But that kick was dead center accurate. It's unfortunate that his streak comes to an end, but you know what? It took a 65-yard field goal to break Cairo Santos' streak. A streak in which he's hit clutch field goals over and over again against Tampa and New Orleans last season. Hits couple clutch field goals this season. It just doesn't work out in the end, and the Bears fall 29-27. This game had pretty much a bit of everything. This is probably a Game of the Year candidate. This is probably the Game of the Year for Monday Night Football. I would not be surprised. I was actually really close to just stop paying attention to the game and just not really watching anymore. But, I mean, after they got the fumble recovery, I was automatically invested right back in because I expected them to take that ball, at least put some more points on the board, and probably put the game out of reach, not something else. But, like, yeah. But you know what? I'm proud of our boys. This team showed resilience today because they did not have to fight only just one team led by Big Ben Roethlisberger, but a second team, and that was the refs. And I already said pretty much most people would agree that the officiating was pretty damn bad in this game and pretty heavily biased in the Steelers' favor. Couple of no calls, couple of bad penalties that cost the Bears precious time and points. And if you think about it, if Marsh does not get called for taunting there, if Tony Correnti does not throw the flag there, Steelers punt and the Bears have probably about 3 minutes to get in just field goal range, and the playbook opens up so much more. And you know what? We probably tie the game, and who knows, maybe the game goes into overtime. But, I mean, that call single-handedly changed the course of this game. And you know what? The Bears did all they could. Justin Fields came out with probably his best drive as a pro. Clutch. He was on fire, right to Mooney on the money. And look, I mean, the officiating was pretty bad. But you know what? The Bears committed some pretty bad penalties. They committed a lot of very bad ones. Of course, the biggest ones that impacted the game were the ones that were pretty bad calls. That's the unfortunate part. The Bears had really bad penalties, especially in the early game. But, man, did some of the calls towards the end of the game were just awful and just totally in the Steelers' favor. This game is going to be talked about for a long time, especially as we lead up to Week 10. The Bears are going into their bye week. I mean, everyone's going to be talking about it. And I mean, everybody's going to be talking about the officiating in this game. This is going to be the headline of the week, I would assume, along with some of the other headliners, such as Russell Wilson coming back and possibly facing Aaron Rodgers this weekend. I mean, there are so many big headlines this week, and I think when it comes to actual gameplay outside of some of the big upsets of the week, I think this is probably the biggest game of the week. It's just unfortunate it had to end this way, and that the game had to play out the way it did. It was a long game, very tough game, and I don't know what to say. And you know what? Justin Fields continues to look more comfortable. They're starting to open the playbook up a little bit more. This season, we're now 3-6. It may be a lost cause. We've got Baltimore after our bye week at home. Who knows how we perform against them? Detroit on Thanksgiving, and then the Cardinals and Packers after that, followed by Minnesota, Seattle, New York, and Minnesota again. This season may be a lost season. But you know what? It's progress, because if we've looked at seeing what Justin Fields has progressed at least this much in the year now, if he continues to progress at the rate that he is, man, he's going to be a menace on the field for the next however so many years, and he might be the first great Bears quarterback. I'm not going to jump the gun and say he's a godsend and he's going to break the curse, but seeing how he has progressed and he continues to just get better every week, I would not be surprised if he is the one to break not only the Chicago Bears quarterback curse, but the Ohio State quarterback curse. So the bye week. One thing of focus: stop committing penalties. A lot of false starts and offsides. Stupid penalties that don't need to be committed and don't need to be, we don't need to have, especially as many as we had. And I was honestly surprised because we did not have Charles Leno in this lineup. But I mean, fix the penalties. And obviously, I think these 2 weeks of rest should allow Khalil Mack to rest up, and he'll be back to close to full strength, hopefully, by the time we get to our game against Baltimore. Alec Ogletree should be back in. Eddie Jackson should be back in. I hope that our defense can be at full strength because we're going to need it, especially on top of the line, because the Ravens are probably, I think, the best rushing team in the league. I would not be surprised if they are. I think they are, and I'm going to bet that they are. So a lot of questions going into the bye week, a lot of answers that will have to be made as we hit Baltimore in 2 weeks. So that's going to do it for this one. Unfortunately, the Bears couldn't come out. They find the short end of the stick yet again. We're going in the bye week. A lot of adjustments need to be made. Hit like if you like this video. Hit subscribe if you really liked it. And I'll see you guys next time.